All right, we are live on this Saturday morning, February 28th. MS Now live coverage of the breaking news overnight and developing this morning. The U.S. and Israel launching major combat operations against Iran in the early hours of this morning. Iran has already responded with retaliatory strikes of its own against Israel and other countries in the region, including Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. In a social media post confirming the U.S. attacks, President Trump called for the overthrow of Iran's government and urged the Iranian people to rise up.
Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
Over the past week, Willie, David Ignatius and I have been talking to the negotiators who, U.S. negotiators or people around the negotiators who had a very positive view of progress that was being made. In my conversation with the president yesterday afternoon, though, he said the next 2 weeks will be very interesting and suggested that he needed to do something that no other president had been able to do since 1979. That's get rid of Iran's terror regime. I will say this morning, talking to our allies in the Gulf region, many obviously very concerned. One telling me that the United States and Israel attacked Iran, and yet they're facing no blowback from it. It's only the United States' allies. So if you attack, that's fine, but let us know and then be able to protect us. That said, though, Willie, one or two countries in the region have already voiced support for this attack.
Yeah, we talk about the UAE, you talk about Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar. Those are home to American military bases that have come under attack since this joint strike from the United States and Israel inside of Iran, where, as we've been saying, if you're just waking up here at the top of the hour, 8 o'clock on the East Coast, the President of the United States, and you just heard it there, calling directly for regime change. It's not implied here. It's not something that he may think about later. He's saying this is about taking out the regime that effectively has been in place since 1979. David Ignatius has been reporting this morning that the Supreme Leader was, in fact, a target. David is with us, along with MS Now senior national security reporter David Rohde, MS Now national security and intelligence analyst, former CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos, and retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. A great group assembled to walk through this. David Ignatius, let me begin with you for people who are just waking up, just where we are right now and how diplomacy failed apparently in the last 24 to 48 hours to bring about these strikes.
Willie, to briefly summarize, the negotiators close to the process, the talks that have been taking place in Geneva, describe an Iranian offer that was close to President Trump's demand, close to an assurance that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon in the future. But I think there was very limited trust in those assurances. And it's clear that the president had a broader, deeper goal in mind, that he wanted to go to the heart. This regime is unpopular in the region, unpopular from everything we can see at home, and has decided on this very ambitious course. We all recall President Dave Petraeus, general in Iraq, his question as the Iraq war was unfolding in 2003, tell me how this ends. Nobody has an answer for that question in Iran. Just to share some new information, talking to sources in the Gulf, they describe Iran's missile attacks in response to the U.S. attacks on Iran as muted in terms of intensity, but lots of countries were targeted. So broad, but not having the kind of devastating effect that those countries feared. The UAE says it was successful in shooting down all the Iranian missiles that were coming. There is, among these Gulf countries, an expectation of future attacks on oil infrastructure and Gulf shipping, which would have a significant economic effect on energy prices if they're carried out. I also would note that the Saudi government just issued a statement expressing full solidarity and unwavering support for regional countries that have been hit by Iranian strikes. So in that sense, Saudi Arabia seems to be now openly voicing support for the U.S. position and against Iran. So those are a few new developments, but on the really big questions, Willie and Joe, we just don't have any answers yet.
Right. So, earlier in our coverage here, we were talking with Richard Haass. This, of course, is, if you're just joining us, a major strike on Iran, a surprise attack, a joint operation with Israel. And Richard Haass was questioning the immediate threat that Iran was posing right now, calling this a war of choice. And Iran, by the way, immediately responding with missiles off in multiple directions. And I'm thinking of your reporting, your conversations with people close to the negotiations and even the president himself, focusing a lot on the history, on the past 47 years, rather than a strategy or an immediate threat right now, indicating, do you think, a long-term strategy here?
I circle back to what David Ignatius heard about somebody suggesting that it is a Viking-like strategy where you attack and then pull back and negotiate. This is something we discussed earlier in the week on Morning Joe, that it seemed after reporting from the New York Times that the president was going to follow up in Cuba the same way that he followed up in Venezuela, where you have a strong force off the Venezuelan coast, you negotiate, you strike, you pull back, and then the negotiations, you see what happens with the negotiations. They ended up, in the words of the president yesterday to me, which I found to be very insightful in trying to figure out how he's thinking of this. The president said, we got 2 people out of Venezuela, and now we have a chance to make it work for the United States and the region, suggesting the same thing could happen with Cuba. And I believe this must be the president's strategy with Iran. I don't see tens of thousands of boots on the ground. I don't see this being another Iraq. It seems that the president has fixed himself on a strategy, again, as David Ignatius said, a Viking-like strategy where you strike, you pull back, you negotiate, you threaten another strike. I don't know whether that's going to happen, but it certainly seemed from my talks with the president yesterday, he was not interested in the niceties of the nuclear negotiations or the missile negotiations. He declared that the Iranian leaders were bad people who had killed Americans over the decades, and that the regime needed to be taken out. He didn't use those exact words, but Mika, after I discussed it with you, we both decided that seemed to be his strategy, whether it happened immediately or I thought perhaps over the next 3 to 4 days, because of the things that were saying by the Omani foreign minister and also my sources inside the negotiations. But Mark Polymeropoulos, I would love to have you help us on the intel side of this. General Herdling, obviously an extraordinary resource in telling us what war games, Iranian war games over the past decades have looked like, and the strengths and weaknesses. One thing that the intel community has consistently warned American presidents about are the asymmetrical attacks that might follow, even if an Iranian government were crippled, that there could be terrorist attacks across the region, across Europe, even across America. That's something, again, for people that haven't been tuned in to this conflict for years. This is something that we've heard for decades. Even if you took the Iranian regime down, the terror elements of the regime would move forward. I know I've heard you saying this is something we should be concerned about for quite some time. Talk about that. Talk about the concerns the intel community has had for some time and what we should be looking looking for in the weeks and months to come, the possibilities?
Well, look, Joe, Iran is the leading state sponsor of terrorism on the planet and has been an adversary of the United States, an enemy of the United States for decades and decades. We all have long memories of Iranian terrorist attacks. So the intelligence community and my old colleagues in the Counterterrorism Mission Center are going to be laser focused on what? Well, first of all, it's on protecting U.S. embassies, protecting U.S. facilities overseas. Iran has a very effective terrorist apparatus. We've seen them employ that. And so we're going to be working with our liaison partners of other intelligence services to kind of rattle the trees to make sure that any kind of known terrorist operatives around the world from Iran are being surveilled, are being monitored. We're going to bolster our defenses at our embassies as well. And there's also the notion of what happens even in places like the United States. Look, the New York Police Department just put out a statement a couple hours ago saying they're on heightened alert. Well, they are because the New York Police Department and the FBI have foiled Iranian terrorist plots in the United States, in New York and Washington and other places. And so Iran has a lot of tools in their toolkit. And this is something that they would take not just days or weeks, but even months if this conflict goes on to put in place. And so I think that, a lot of us are going to focus on, Iranian missiles being shot at U.S. bases in the region. But the Iranian terrorist apparatus is quite effective, and we're going to have to be on our game on this. Just both the United States and our partners. One other key point, Joe, and I have to say this, I have to raise it, because for a lot of us, Iran has been an issue. It gets to be a little emotional as well. There's a long history, as President Trump noted, of Iranians killing Americans. Whether we're talking about our station chief in Beirut in the 1980s, Bill Buckley, someone whose grave I still visit at Arlington National Cemetery. The Marine barracks in Beirut, the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, Bob Ames, a legendary CIA officer, David Ignatius knew well, in fact. Then you go on to Iraq with the explosively formed projectiles that Iran was providing to Shia proxy groups that killed Americans. Khobar Towers, a U.S. military housing complex. There's a lot of American blood on Iran's hands. And so as we debate this, whether this was wise or not, I think a lot of us in the national security world, particularly practitioners, are saying, look, the rent was really long overdue on this. Maybe this was not the right course of action, but there's a side of it that you have to kind of think back. And President Trump was right to kind of list those grievances that the U.S. has with Iran. Many of us do feel that way.